Welcome to Stress-Free IEP. You do not need to do it all alone. With your host, Frances Shefter, Principal of Shefter Law. You can get more details and catch prior episodes at www.shefterlaw.com. The Stress-Free IEP video podcast is also posted on YouTube and LinkedIn, and you can listen to episodes through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. Now, here's the host of Stress-Free IEP, Frances Shefter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our show. Today's guest is Mary McDirmid of All Needs Planning. And this is something as parents, I know all of us think about and say, someday we'll get to all of that planning, or I don't have enough money to do financial planning at this point, or, well, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to live forever, so my kids don't need, right? Are these all the excuses you've heard, Mary?
You're going to live forever and never going to die. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And so financial planning, I know like it's something that we all need to do, clearly. Is there like a threshold, though, of like how much money you have or need to have to do this financial planning stuff?
Threshold of money. I don't ever think there is any kind of barrier of entry in that way of like how much you actually need. Because I have people coming in with lots and making lots and spending lots, right? And so you can say, which side of that coin are you on, or I just don't have enough and I'm not spending a lot, right? And so it's really impossible to be like, you have to have X threshold to come in. We really try and give as much information to everybody that's possible. So our model is kind of built to help you as far along as you can. If you're not a fit for our perfect model, then we're trying to get you at least there on your own DIY with a little bit of our help. So I guess our families don't get to not plan. You don't have the choice, right? If you don't plan, dire things will happen with your kids' benefits. And so even if you have a tiny amount of money, anything over $2,000, they can't have. So
right.
You can't not, right? So we got to if you don't have a ton and you're like, I'm really worried. Well, yeah, we have other resources to make sure that you can get along as far as you can on your own too.
Yeah. No, and that's so true, because that's one thing we've talked about before with, special needs trusts and ABLE accounts and all the other stuff, is that there are so many little things that we don't know about. And the problem is, right, not knowing about them is no excuse. And you could do something, oops, and cut off all benefits, right?
Totally. It doesn't take a lot. Like $2,000 is not, we both know that's a ridiculous amount. But and best of intentions. Like, it's not malicious in nature. And it's usually, to be really honest, the parents know the rules. Highly likely the parents know the rules. If they're Medicaid or SSI, they've been told the rules. It's kind of outside, like grandparents are best of intentions, awful execution. I'm sure you've seen that too.
Yeah. The uncle or the aunt leaves money or wants to gift for their care and don't know. And it's like, wait, we can do it, but we have to do it this way or that way, right? So how's like your financial planning different?
Yeah. So a couple of ways I like to describe it. One, you're going to get used to me being a visual story human. That's just the way I roll. And so I give this example with my glasses. I won't be able to see when I do this, but like a typical financial plan is just this wonderful face that you see. Like, we're just planning for retirement. We're going to have enough money to do that. If we want a gift, like that's all the things a normal, typical financial plan would be, like just this face. Now we put these glasses on, and this is your kiddo that we have to plan for, right? And so now we're having that plan, but we're looking through the lens of your child. And I will make you put your face mask on first. As caregivers, we never do that. Financially, that's not how this is going to be able to roll and be successful, right? So I always say we actually have to put your life vest on first financially to make the picture better for your kiddo in the future. And with that being said, we're trying to give our kids a great life, keep them benefit eligible. Those systems aren't buddies. They're not drinking friends. They're kind of like on opposite ends of the spectrum, right? And so we're planning for 2 lifetimes with that dynamic over the top of it, right? Because without benefits, you can have millions of dollars and probably not be able to support your child through your working years, your retirement years, and when we're not around.
Right.
Does that kind of?
Yeah, no, definitely it does, because but and the reality of it is, though, whether it's $100,000 or $100 million, you got to plan right.
Totally. Because over 2,000, you got to put it somewhere, right?
Right. And as you said, plan for your own retirement. And what happens, I mean, I know the things that we never want to talk about, but what happens if one of you gets disabled? You know, right?
It's not a joke when we were talking about that in the beginning. Like, we all think we're not going to get sick. We're never going to get sick. We're never going to die. We're going to be able to take care of our kids forever. They're also going to live with us forever. Also not true friends. They're not.
Right.
They're not. But there's great success stories out there about them moving out, and they get buried by the scary stories, which they're both, right? And so I always tell people, like, I had great delusions when Ruth was in my life of being like, oh yeah, she's gonna be with us forever, of course, like, why wouldn't she? And then I'm like, wait a minute, I see our clients that are in their 70s, and that is not, you cannot caregive forever. You just can't. I'm 43 right now. I feel 55 for sure. Like, you add some years on by caregiving, right? And so I think that not only are we going to not live forever, we're not going to not get sick. We're also not going to be able to caregive forever.
Yeah.
And so those are the realities that we're going to really drum up.
Yeah. And it's also, I'm just thinking about it along the lines of, like, quality of life for you. Mm-hmm. Like, yes, we want to be mom and dad and caregiver for our kids, but when we have a child, that the assumption is somewhere 18 to 24, they're out on their own.
Yeah.
And yes, with a lot of our neurodiverse kids, the reality is they're not going to be out on their own, and never going to. But that doesn't mean we as caregivers need to give up fully how we want to live in order to support them, right?
Yeah, and I think that's so hard to bring up, right? I bring it up all the time, and I think, like, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but, like, the expectation of working with our team, me specifically, I'm very direct. I'm gonna give you the stuff that's not fun to talk about, because then we can make a plan about it. So I always ask people, like, in the meeting, like, are you the person that wants to know all the information, even if it's scary, and we'll make a plan? Or are you the person that's kind of, I'm going to bury my head and just hope for the best? Because these people are, I'm here. These are, they're just harder for me. Not like I can't work with them, but I'm going to still bring it up, and it's going to be emotionally harder and a toll on you. And I'm up for both, but I'm also not going to waste your time. Time for us is so precious that I'm just like, I got to be direct. I got to tell you the hard stuff so that we can make a plan, so that you can actually get through this procrastination of what you've kind of put off because you think it's going to be impossible, I think, is really the assumption that we're thinking.
Yeah. And I think that's a lot of it too, is that, well, I don't have the extra funds. I don't have the this, and I don't have the that.
I don't have the energy. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. Right.
Yeah. And that's when, sometimes it works out fine, but more often than not, when you don't have a plan, it's just what happens. And
and I really want to, and I want to address too, like, we're all in an emergent state, right? We're in systems that are reactive, right? The school system, the medical system, all the systems that we deal with as caregivers are reactive. And I'm over here being like, let's be proactive about something. And they're like, I like you, but I don't get that from others. So I'm wondering how this is all, how does this all work? Because I am a proactive person. I also have a kiddo that has a rare disease that's a completely reactive disease. Like, I don't know what's going on with her day to day, and there could be some bad stuff happening, and I have no idea, and we just have to wait and see. And it's painful. So I get on the other side too, when you're like, Mary, you asked me to be proactive, and I only want to live in this reactive world, and I'm living day to day, and I only have energy for X amount. I'm like, cool, I'll take it. I'll take whatever you have to put towards it. Like, if you have 10 minutes, I have 10 minutes, right? I'm going to meet you wherever you're at.
But it is that it's, none of us want to think about the mortality and the getting sick and all that other stuff. But, we all hear the horror stories. We've all seen the horror stories. of, people that are left and they're left to the state, and, parents had, millions, but it wasn't handled right. And so the money went elsewhere, and the kid that should have been cared for in, not that the state's facilities aren't okay, but parents had the money for the child, adult child, to be in a different type of environment.
Totally. Yeah. And I think it's super hard. Like I said, the scariest of those get out there in the world, right? We're all on the Facebook groups. We're all on the things about us parents, right? And the scary, the bad gets the loud. And I'm like, man, there's so many good success rates. Like I have clients who have like, man, I moved my child into a group home and they're loving it. And like, I'm like, where's that story? Like, where's, because I always tell people, like, let's move them out when we're around so we can see it go amazing. And that's joy. And we can be a parachute if it doesn't. And that's okay too. But you can't just hold on to them. We can't hold on to them forever. Like, I think our job, like you said, as parents is to get them into the world, whatever world that is, in whatever structure that is, in whatever environment that works for their safety. But like, my job as a parent is to get my kids ready for the world. And for Ruth, it's more to get the world ready for her.
Right. I love that you say that like, give them the opportunity now while we're still around to find the right thing. Like, okay, so we're going to try this supportive group living. Yeah. Okay, it didn't work. That's all right. Child moves back home. Let's see what skills do we need, or what other environment is more appropriate.
What support, what environment, what's out there, what other models? Do we have the funds to maybe have a condo with a roommate? Like, if you don't try, then what you said is the worst example is like, you pass away, your kiddo's at your home, there's no one to support them in that home, and then they move, you're gone, they move. That's, to me, that's worst case. Like, I don't want any of that.
Right, because then they're not only losing their caregiver parent, but they're leaving their home.
The home.
And everything they know.
The support, the safety, the comfort. Yeah.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, it's like, those are the things you don't think about. And it's, I'm just thinking, like, it's just, I know it's so hard. Right, my wheels are going, like always, right? But it is hard. I mean, like, and even, like, knock on wood, both my kids, they're neurodiverse, but will be able to live independently. But even still, like, will they? You never know, right?
Yeah.
Something else could happen, and something could. And I work hard for my money, and I work hard for what I do. And I want to protect it. Obviously I want to give my kids, as much as possible, but I also want them to be independent as possible. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like, I've seen both sides, right? I've seen, and I was that parent. Like, my daughter's born, she's only 8 now. And I'm also like, okay, yeah, you're going to go into the world somehow. I don't know what that looks like, but like, we got to figure it out. And I'm open to being curious and knowing that there's good things in the world. Like, I want to assume positive intent until you prove me wrong. And so I'm going to do that with our systems. And I think, we just hear all the loud noise of the bad, and then we start to formulate that in our head. And so if I can really stay in that positive intent as long as possible until I'm proven wrong, and then I will have boundaries, and then I will be supportive, and then I will do all the things I need to do. But like, I gotta go in thinking that, it's just a real not fun existence, right?
I know what you mean. Yeah, and it's, it goes back to the transition planning, like going back to IEPs, that the schools don't really look at transition planning until they turn 14. And you need to think about it when the child's 8.
Yeah.
You need to think about it when the child's born.
Right.
What is life going to look like? What do I want life to look like? What do I need to teach my child? What experiences does my child need to have to be able to live their life the fullest that they can, right? In an appropriate, in an environment. And what is that environment going to look like? And what does the child want the environment to look like?
That's the thing. So with me, I think it's heavy of like, this isn't about me. Like, none of this is about me. Ruth's life is, I'm I'm a chauffeur, I'm a snack provider, I'm a safety shelter like I'm gonna provide the safe environment to get you to the next, right? And so, and I always tell people when I tell my story about our rare disease journey or any of that thing, it's like, this is my parent caregiver story. This is not Ruth's story. We don't know what she wants to tell the world yet, right? But it's as a parent, you're literally just a really underpaid support person to
right.
get them into the world.
Exactly.
Right.
You're a personal assistant. Like
totally.
all
I'm a great project manager for like, if anybody needs one, right? So it's like, but like, it's not about me. It's about them. It's about them and their experience and getting them to a spot where they're going to be in the world in some form or fashion, some community, some form or fashion. I don't know what that looks like now, but I'm excited to see as it goes.
And I love that you say that, because I always have that pull of both of my kids are neurodiverse, and that's their life and their business. And is it my business to share, and it's kind of like, although both have given permission, they're both very open about it, because the way we say is their brains work differently.
Totally.
And they'll say like, yeah, my brain works like this and my brain works like that. And they're like open, because that's what I want it to be. It's not, there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. The brain works differently.
Totally.
But it's like, is it my story to tell? But I'm not telling their story. I'm telling my story as their caregiver and how it impacts me. Right.
Yeah. And caregiver parent, I always really try and like, those are two, I think what like the hardest topics to bring up are like, these are two different jobs.
Oh yeah.
And usually there's always one that's heavy on one heavy on the other, right? If they're married. Because I was heavy caregiver and my husband was heavy parent, which was great for both of my children. But those are different jobs, and one's fun and one's intense. And so like bringing that up with a couple too, where you're like, okay, who's the hefty, who's getting the medical appointments together, who's going to the IEPs, who knows the real stuff, who's going to the annual assessment with your DDA, DDD, whatever system you have at your state, like who's that? Because that's the caregiver. All right, who's going to the trampoline park, like playing in the snow, who's like making sure that they're having joy. Cool. All right, now can we swap a little bit so they both get to see what the other side is
doing both in some incidences, right? Like you got to do both. And that's the reality, is that as parents we can't, and caregivers, like it's that line and finding it. It's like I know I've heard parents say like, I'm just a stay-at-home mom. I'm like, oh, don't do that to yourself. Oh no,
please. That job's so hard.
Yeah,
I tell people like, I took an easy way. Like my job is respite to me. Like I love working because I get a break from my family. I love my family. It doesn't mean that I don't love my family any less. It just means that I actually need a break. I want to interact with you. I want to interact with our parents and our clients that are in the same stuff as I'm experiencing. And I always say it's such a harder job. If you work inside the home, you're doing the hardest job.
Yeah, exactly. Because you lose your if you don't make time for you and plan for you, you become, I'm the mother, the wife, the personal assistant, the project manager, all of
the project manager.
Right. They name it all, but it is true, because it's a project manager job to everybody's calendar. I mean, you see the calendar I have on my refrigerator. It's all color coded. Like, this is for one daughter. This is for one. This is for me. This is for my husband. This is for all of us. This is for just us, like this is the kids thing, but I'm handling it, so my color is circling it, or Seth is handling it, so his color is circling it.
I mean, we do a check-in, like at the end of the day. I'm always like, if I'm leaving the office, I'm like, do I need to pick up anybody? Is it my job today to pick up, like, who's going who, what's happening? And I have the calendar, but I'm still like, just to verify, like, we have everyone at the house.
Yeah, exactly.
Except for me. Everyone's there. Great.
Exactly. Right. And it happens. I know it's happened before that, we forgot to pick up the kids, like, oops. And life goes on. we're human, right?
Yeah.
So I think we talked about this a little, the hardest topics. I think so as pretty much what would you say would be the hardest topic that you talk about?
Yeah. So one, everything feels emergent now. So it's exactly what we talked about. Like, how do I get you to think out of this emergent today, the thing that's the most important, to think of a little bit in the future? Like, how do I take something off your brain that is emergent to you today that can then address future things? We're not going to caregive forever. That's a hard one for most. Yeah. That is just to just even think about it for the first time, you're like, oh, like your wheels were turning where you're like, oh yeah, how is that going to work out? What does that look like? How does it feel? And it feels scary because it's unknown. And so I think when you address an unknown, their expectation is you have a perfect answer. There's no perfect answer, right? We're going to have to work through it over years and years. And we have really long runways to get to those points of when they're not going to be in your home anymore, or you're not going to caregive anymore. But that, I think, is a new concept to bring into the fold compared to the everyday IEPs. We're paying for bills, we're paying for therapies, we have equipment, we need a van, we have to adapt our house. Like, those things are today. But then, is this house going to house us all for a long time? How long do we anticipate them all to live there? When you age, how is that going to work out, right? That's the stuff that we're like, nah, let's just put that over there again. I don't want to bring that up. I think finance in general, just money, is a mix of math, emotion, and habits. So we're trying to mix those, and the emotion part of ours is just higher. Right. The stakes are higher. Lots of things depend on if we do this planning right. And we take it very seriously. Like, we live it, so we know that. So I think the math has to show that this is how do we work this out? We gotta be emotionally ready to go into those conversations, assume positive intent, like have a simple step-by-step thing that people can follow. And then, do you need to change a habit today to make sure that happens?
Right. And that's always the hard stuff, right? It's the, thinking, how will it impact, and how will it, we talk about it all the time. And it's so interesting because, for me, one of the reasons I love doing the show was I'm learning so much stuff on a personal level, right?
Totally,
I learned about ABLE accounts. I'm like, oh my God. And so both my kids now have ABLE accounts,
Totally.
And the difference with special needs trust and these services and that services and what's out there, because, and that's, the mom supports groups, the caregiver support groups are where we learn so much. And it's scary that there's a lot out there that people don't know about.
Yeah, right? I think we get that a lot. So I think the thing that people come to us a lot with is, I got to trust. Now what? And I'm like, cool, what are you going to put in there? And they're like, I have no idea. But right. I heard that I needed a special needs trust. So I went and got one. You're like, great, awesome. I'm into it. But like, do we have anything, assets now to put into it? Is it springable upon your death? Like, this is technical, a little technical, but like, like what's going to go in there?
Right.
How much do we need? What's the target? What assets are great to pass on? What aren't as beneficial?
Who's going to manage it?
Who's going to manage it?
And that's where,
how does an ABLE come in? Do I need both? What's, like, we get a lot of like, oh, you're a lawyer. And I'm like, I'm not a lawyer. You're a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. Yeah. But like, I do think that like it is really great that it gets drummed into families that they need to trust, because they absolutely do. But our next step is then like, what are we gonna do with it?
Well, and the thing that makes me crazy a lot of times is people are like, oh, you can just go online and do Zoom legal or this or like to do a trust, and don't do it.
Not for our families.
Right, exactly. I'm a lawyer and I won't do it. You know what I mean? Like,
I wish
right?
that was true. Like, I kind of wish,
Right.
not that I want people to be out of business, but I'm like,
Right.
I wish that the documents were that good online that
Yeah.
could be a resource for our families. But
Well, and it's like what you said, like you need to put something in it. Like, you know, it needs to be funded. It needs this. And what do you have that? And those are the things that you don't know are missing. And
totally. You're like, I got this
it's
trust. Cool. All the assets are going to go in there. And then I do think there is something to be said to from the sibling point of view, where they come and they're like, well, either they don't have a trust and they're like, I'm going to get everything to the other sibling. And one of our big thing is that, one, that's a risk, right? There's risks involved in that, but it's also more work. Like, if a sibling is going to have a position in another child's life, a typical with a non-typical, I'm going to make that less work. I'm going to make the least amount of work for that person as possible, because if you pass on all your assets to one of your children, how do they know what to use for that child? How do they know the protections? How do they know the $2,000? How do they know X, Y, Z, all the rules? You're giving them a lot of work when you could set up all of these other buckets to make sure that the provisions are in order to protect the person and to give that sibling less work.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And those are the things. Breaking up the estate, what percentages, how is that going to work out? Like, you got to put some thought to that and have conversations. I think you probably, I do this with everybody where I'm like, what is your parents' plan? The generation above us is very tight with their information.
Yes.
So this is what we do. Salem, you met with me. I listened to this podcast today with Frances and Mary, and they said, I really should know what your plans are, not just for money's sake, but like, what are your wishes and do I have a job? Because if I have a job in your estate, I really want to know what it is now. I want to know where your documents are. I want to know what my job is. I want to make sure your wishes are fulfilled in the exact way that you want them. Right. No other reason to ask them those questions other than you wanted to support what their wishes are. Yeah. That way you can find out what's going on and you can make sure that that little great expectations, awful execution doesn't happen for your kiddo, right?
And I've seen it both ways. I've seen it that they've made it easy, like everything's in trusts, everything goes into a trust, it's boom, 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 that's done. And I've seen it that 2 years later, the adult children can't even find all the assets.
Totally.
News if there's out there. And that's the thing, like that is scary. You know what I mean?
And
like if I had
years without having assets, like what happens to their house? Can you pay their property tax? Can you pay for things without finding their assets for 2 years? Because like just having it be easier for the next, I feel like should be motivation for the generation above. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it like putting it on me, say I met with this woman, she's awesome. She just wants to make sure your wishes are fulfilled. And what job do I have? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But like, you want that for yourself, then you're going to want it for the next generation coming behind you. Yeah. And if you've had a parent pass on either side, messy or clean, you're like, okay, I'm going to make this clean. Because if it's clean, you're like, oh, I want that. And if it's messy, you want it to be clean. So either way, when one of your parents passes, you're going to be like, oh.
And the joke in my house with my dad was like, my dad is going to control his money from the grave as much as he can.
Absolutely.
And that's what he did. He had it
provisions. There's
exactly.
You got to jump
fine because
fire hoop to get it.
Exactly. Oh yeah. You know, my dad. But it's, you know what, like that's fine. Because, you know, the money is my mom's now and that's where it should be. And we keep telling her spend, you know, enjoy it. And that's the thing is like, he worked hard for his money and mom worked obviously with him and, you know, together built their where they are. And his fear was always that it would end up the state taking it or an ex-spouse taking it or this or that. And so he had those conversations with us and this is where everything is. This is what you need to do. And I mean, he was very, very clear. One thing that people don't know with his inheritance is making sure it's in its own account. It's not marital. It doesn't get combined because it's not. You just gave your spouse half, which of course we all think we love our spouses. They're going to be there forever. We're going to be married forever. But what happens if you're not?
Totally.
And what happens if you go first? Now they have everything. And now what happens to your money is, where is it going to go next?
Totally. I mean, we have a lot of randomly, it's the female often that's like, I'm going to pass early. He's going to remarry. He's great. He's going to remarry Floozy. She's going to take half of our money. And then my kids aren't going to get anything. And I'm like,
yep.
This is a lot of like spinning up about this in the middle of the night where I'm like, okay, let's do some things, whatever you want to do. I mean, you could do an easy solution, right? Survivorship life insurance. Like, you both have to pass away for anyone to benefit. No one will benefit while you're alive, either of you. Cool. There's a bucket of money that can go to your kids, right? Like, you don't have to have a marital trust. You have to do all the things of all the things, right? And it's come up the last couple of months where I'm like, personally, I haven't, no. That's not my head does not spin up about those specific things. It spins out about other things, but that one for me is not.
But then that's the thing. It's like going down that rabbit hole and the head spinning as parents and caregivers and stuff. It's like, go talk to the financial planner, go talk to the attorney, go talk to the people, get it in place. So you don't have, that's one thing that now I don't need to worry about it.
Totally. And we have 20 tabs open, right? All the time. Yeah. If we could close 5.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now we only have to worry about this 15 other ones. Those are another category that we have to worry about. But like I always tell people, if we could free up our brains as like advocates and caregivers and parents, think of the things we could change. Like we are strong, we are willing, we are convincing. We could change a lot of stuff in this world if we're not kind of just only worried about this stuff that's keeping us up. And if I can accomplish that, I'm in. Let's go.
Yeah. So what can parents expect working with you? Like if they're like, okay, fine, you got it. I need to make this phone call. What's going to happen?
Fine. Okay, I'll do it.
Right, exactly.
So I'll explain the process, but I always tell people, you've got to expect direct, honest conversations, right? That's part of our brand. That's what we're coming to. That's why we're great at our jobs. And most people react well. Right. I would say they're like, okay, you're not going to mess around. You're not going to waste my time. You're giving me information that's really important. I'm in. Right. So direct conversation. I like actionable steps to reach the specific goal that you have. So every email I have send out after every meeting is our discuss, your to-dos, my to-dos. I am a former an actual project manager. So like I want you to have actionable things from every interaction that we have. Right. Yeah. And then we are your support for this. Like we are proactively thinking, we are thinking ahead, we are your accountability partner. We're all of those things that you think of. Our process includes an intro with me, a draft meeting, so you see what the financials look like. And usually that brings up a lot of other stuff. So the move out question happens, right? Okay, what are we doing for our kids that are unpaid labor? How are we going to replace that if something happens to one of us? Like the financials kind of bring out a lot of emotional things, I would say, right? Yeah. From that point, we present you the fee to get the action plan together. Okay, so we are fee-based planners. So meeting with me 1, introduction, strategy meeting 2, proposal to work together with the fee, cost of care meeting with Kathy, my partner, which is a big one. So that is where we're trying to project out cost of care for the lifetime. And she's going to ask you tons of things about your kids. So what are you doing for them in an ADL way? How do they behave out socially? Are they able to go out? Like that's where all the juice comes, because we got to try and project out to our best ability what the costs are. And then the last step of that action plan is delivering the action plan. Has legal, care plan, financial, all in one document, and a 6-month runway of what that looks like, of what you need to do. Okay. From that action plan is when you decide also if you want to be our forever person, right? So if you want us to help you implement all the things in this plan, we have an AUM, asset under management type of base percentage. And then if you don't have assets to manage, we can do it on a fee level as well.
Got it. So you're all stop shop, right?
We're trying to be, right. And I tell people all the way through that action plan that get those first 4 meetings, it's really, we're figuring out if we're a match, right?
Yeah.
We want to make sure you like the way we work. We want to make sure you are taking our instructions and you are going to implement some of the things that we want to do. So it's really like it's a date. Let's date for a bit to see if we want to make this a lifetime commitment, right? And then once people come with us, they're usually with us forever. Like we manage trust for people that their parents have passed, and now the trust is actually being implemented the way that we have all imagined it to be, and we're helping make sure that all goes the way it's supposed to go. Right. So,
and what states and areas do you serve?
Yeah, so I'm in Washington State. I'm in Spokane, Washington, not Seattle, close to Idaho, and my partners are in Virginia. And so we can actually cover all time zones. So as people come on board in different states that we're not aware of, my other partner, Kathy, will learn the waiver system. She'll learn your state's different type of guardianship rules. She'll learn, what group home models do you have there. So she'll absorb that new state's, let's say, quirky differences from state to state that we all need to know. And so she takes on that. So I think, I have the Northwest, probably all the way over to the Dakotas there in that DC East Coast. So we have a Massachusetts all the way down to Florida, to Texas. We're just kind of everywhere. And it is easier to meet on Zoom. Caregivers and parents, it's hard to get 2 physical people into an office. So actually Zoom works amazing.
Yeah.
Just
because I was going to say, I know it matters sometimes where your financial planner is in what you're doing, because I think there are some things in accounts that some products of financial planners, you have to be licensed in that state.
We do. So if we needed to get licensed, we can do it in 24 hours. So somebody comes on from a state that we're not affiliated, we just add it to the license. Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
So then you hit everybody. That is so awesome to know, because that's important. As lawyers, we can't do that. It's a long process.
I know. You're licensing and doctors. If we can get doctors to be licensed in the U.S. everywhere, telemedicine would be able to be
I know. I know. It's the same with lawyers. With special education lawyers, it's federal law. I understand states all do it differently, but it's federal law,
Yeah. And my big thing in the legal world too, if guardianship could not be county specific, that would really help us all. Why?
Right. I know.
At least be state specific, and then just all the counties adhere to whatever the state wants. But that's hard for me. That's hard for me.
Yeah. It is.
But we're everywhere.
Got it. And so do you have any events or courses or trainings?
Yeah, totally. So we are revamping. We had a masterclass courses. So we're kind of revamping that so they're in a little more bite-sized pieces. I think they were hours. So we're trying to make them 15-minute. So we're revamping those videos right now. They should be out by the spring. We do presentations. It's starting to get heavy. So we get heavy in the spring and the fall when everybody is kind of in a routine. And so on our website, we have a calendar. So we do them with specific non-for-profits, but anyone can join at any point. We do a pretty hefty tour of conferences in the summer. So if you are involved in any, non-for-profit groups that put on conferences, we're more than willing to come to your conference and speak on these specific topics and do webinars or presentations at those conferences. Those are kind of, I do a lot of rare disease specific ones just because I'm in this space. And so I get to know those. I love those families. So I'm I'll go to your rare disease conference. Yeah. Let me learn about your specific thing. What's happening? Right. What developments do you guys have going on?
Yeah.
So like you said, it's you get to piggyback and go to sessions where you're I have no business being here, but I'm totally going to go to this one and learn crazy stuff about this specific rare disease and what's happening. Right. So, we do webinars all through the spring and fall. We're going to have our masterclass launch, I think, by the summer. And then we do conferences in person all through the summer. Pretty hefty.
Got it. And they are all on your website, which I know we'll have the link in once it's fully published.
Yeah, and if anybody's excited and they're like, I really want to meet with Mary, I could put my Calendly link in there too. So you can that's how everybody books with us. You just book through Calendly. Your first meeting is an intro. We get to know each other, and that's an easiest way to get in.
Oh, that is awesome. Makes it nice and easy. Because that's one of the things, like I know I did for my website, Charlie, because, as parents and caregivers, it's, 2 a.m. when we have a minute to think about something. And it's like, oh, good. There's a button there. I can book the meeting. Like, done. I don't have to think about it, right?
Everybody does it. Everybody doom scrolls at night. So you might as well oh, there's her link. I'm actually going to take the action today to start this. And if you're that person, do it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This has been so awesome, Mary. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing all your wisdom for all our listeners.
Always, I'm about all the sharing. And remember, assume positive intent until they prove us wrong, right? Assume it. Yeah.
Always.
Make your day better. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Stress-Free IEP with your host, Frances Shefter. Remember, you do not need to do it all alone. You can reach Frances through schefterlaw.com, where prior episodes are also posted. Thank you for your positive reviews, comments, and sharing the show with others through YouTube, LinkedIn, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more.